The alabaster room was packed. It was the private unveiling, and the air buzzed with the sound of quiet money and champagne flutes. My aunt, Melissa, dressed in a gown that probably cost more than my first car, turned to the gallery director. Crystal, she said, her voice loud enough to cut through the murmur. She pointed. Not even at my son, but sort of past him. This young man isn't on the list for the private dinner. I saw my 15-year-old son, Caleb, freeze. Melissa smiled. A tight, socialite smile. He's just a tag-along. Perhaps he can wait in the lobby. The humiliation was instant. I watched Caleb's face burn red as he stared at the floor. He physically shrank, trying to make himself smaller. Crystal looked at me, her eyes wide with panic. Knowing exactly who I was, I placed a hand on Caleb's shoulder. I met my aunt's dismissive gaze. I heard you, Melissa, I said. My voice was perfectly calm. Have you ever been made to feel like an outsider in your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. This wasn't new. Not really. The sting of it was familiar. A dull ache I'd carried for 20 years. The whole reason we were here was to celebrate Melissa's twin daughters, Kayla and Aaliyah. They were both 17 and had just received prestigious art scholarships. The gala was, in theory, to honor them and other young artists. But in our family, it was just another stage for my aunt to perform on. My mother, Brenda, sat at the head of the table, looking like a queen holding court. She's the type of person who believes status isn't just earned, it's a birthright. And in her eyes, her daughter Melissa had won. And I had. Well, I hadn't. To them, I am Yashashri, the flaky artist, the one who never got a real job, the single mom who drifts through life. They pictured me in a tiny, paint-stained apartment, struggling to pay rent. They assumed I couldn't possibly understand their world of secure investments, country club memberships, and, apparently, exclusive gala dinners. I'd learned to live with their assumptions. I'd built a fortress around the quiet satisfaction of my own life. A life they never bothered to ask about. Their condescension was a tax I paid for family peace. But watching them do it to Caleb, that was different. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my son. I watched Melissa's daughters, Kayla and Aaliyah, glance at Caleb with a mixture of pity and disinterest before turning back to their phones. They had already learned the family hierarchy. They were the stars. He was the tag, along. I watched my mother, Brenda, take a delicate sip of her wine, her eyes completely avoiding Caleb, as if acknowledging his presence would somehow validate his right to be there. They weren't just dismissing him. They were teaching him what they'd spent 2 decades trying to teach me that in their story. We were the failures. We were the background characters. We were the ones who should be grateful to just be allowed in the lobby. I just squeezed Caleb's shoulder. My anger, a cold, hard stone in my stomach. I would endure it. I always did. But I was starting to realize that my endurance had taught them that their cruelty was acceptable. Girls, you must be so proud, Melissa said, waving over a server. We'll take a bottle of the Dom Perignon, the $150 one. It's a celebration. After all, she didn't ask. She just ordered. My mother, Brenda, beamed. Oh, Melissa, you always know how to do things right. The conversation became a performance. Melissa was the director, and her daughters were the stars. She went on and on about their scholarships, the prestige of the schools, and the brilliant future ahead of them. Kayla and Aaliyah understand the importance of connections, Melissa announced to the table. But really, to anyone within earshot, it's not just about talent. It's about status. It's about knowing the right people, being seen at the right places. She gestured around the glittering room. Like this? This is where the real art world operates. All evening, she was laser-focused on the main event, the unveiling of a new artist, A young painter who was supposedly the next big thing. I've been following his work. Melissa leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. They say he's the future of contemporary art. Getting in with him now. Well, that's how you secure a legacy. She was practically vibrating with the need to impress. The need to be seen. To be relevant. And while this grand performance was happening, Caleb and I sat at the same table. But we were in a different world. We were invisible. No one asked Caleb about school. No one asked me about my work. We were just there. The tag-along and his flaky artist mother. I watched Caleb. He wasn't looking at anyone. He was just tracing the condensation on his water glass. His shoulders hunched. He had made himself as small as possible. The champagne arrived. The server poured glittering glasses for Melissa. For my mother. For Kayla and Aaliyah. He paused, looking at Caleb. Then at me. Melissa didn't even look up from her phone. Oh! They're fine. Just water for them. The server nodded and left. It was the casual cruelty of it. The effortless way she dismissed us. My mother just watched. Her silence a sharp, clear agreement. I caught Crystal's eye from across the room. She was managing the whole event. Darting between guest tables and staff. She looked stressed. But when she saw us, her expression softened to one of deep concern. She started to walk over. I gave her the slightest shake of my head. Not yet. She stopped, looking confused, but nodded and returned to her work. I just sat there. The sound of Melissa's bragging washing over me. I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. I was realizing, with a chilling clarity, that they hadn't just forgotten about me. They had intentionally, actively, and consistently built a version of me in their heads, the failure, because they needed it to feel good about themselves. And tonight, they had made the mistake of bringing that version of me into my own world. The catered dinner service began. Servers moved through the room with trays of Wagyu steak and roasted vegetables. Our table was served last, when David, the head caterer, and Crystal, my gallery director, finally approached our table. Melissa put down her fork and sighed dramatically. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp with annoyance. "David, is it? And Crystal?" Both of them stopped. I could see the tension in Crystal's shoulders. The service tonight has been, well, disorganized. To be frank, Melissa said, we're supposed to be celebrating, and we've been treated as an afterthought. It's unacceptable. My mother, Brenda, chimed in. She's right. For an event this exclusive, the standards are slipping. I'll need to speak to the owner. This was it. The moment had arrived. Not by my design, but by hers. Crystal looked at me, her eyes pleading, waiting for me to give her permission to speak. David just looked terrified. I stood up slowly. The entire table, including my son Caleb, looked at me. "Melissa, that won't be necessary," I said. She let out a short, condescending laugh. "Yashashri, please. This is for the patrons to handle. This doesn't concern you." "Actually," I said, my voice cutting through her sentence, "it concerns me directly." I looked at David. "David, you report to Crystal, don't you?" He nodded, confused. "Yes, ma'am. She's the gallery director." "And Crystal," I said, turning to her, "you report to me." The air left the table. My mother's eyes widened. Melissa's painted-on smile froze. I don't understand." "Melissa stammeret. What are you talking about?" "Yashashri, what do you mean?" "She reports to you." "I mean exactly that," I said. I looked around the beautiful, packed gallery, at the art I had personally curated, at the staff I had hired. I'm talking about the alabaster room. I mean, I own it. Melissa's fork clattered onto her plate. I purchased this gallery 18 months ago, I said, my voice perfectly level. This is my business. This is my building. Crystal is my employee. David is my head contractor. So, when you insult the service, when you complain about the standards, you are complaining directly to me. The owner, my mother, Brenda, just stared at me. Her mouth was slightly open. Yashashri, she whispered. Is this true? Completely true, I said. I own the Alabaster Room. I also own 2 smaller galleries downtown. This is what I do. This is my not real job. Melissa looked like she had been struck. Her face had gone from a snotty red to a chalky, sickly white. But, you're the flaky artist? I am an artist, I said. But I'm also a businesswoman. You never bothered to ask? You were all too busy, assuming I was failing. Too busy feeling superior to the struggling single mom. Before she could form another word, a new wave of applause erupted from the main gallery. The lights dimmed slightly at our tables, and a spotlight hit the grand entrance. Crystal, my director, stepped up to a small podium. And now, Crystal's voice rang out. It is my distinct honor to introduce the future of contemporary art. The man whose work we are all here to celebrate tonight. This was the moment Melissa had been waiting for. I saw her physically straighten her dress. She was desperate. Absolutely desperate. To be the first to greet him. To make that connection she was talking about. Please welcome Leo Valdez. A young man. Maybe 24. With paint stains on his jacket and a shy, brilliant smile. Walked out into the spotlight. The applause was deafening. Melissa immediately stood up. She pushed her chair back, grabbed her champagne flute, and started to move toward him. Her hand outstretched. Her fake smile plastered on. Mr. Valdez, Mr. Tection. Valdez Melissa. Leo Valdez smiled politely, his eyes scanning the crowd. He nodded at the guests. But he was looking for someone. He saw Melissa approaching him, and he just sidestepped her. He walked right past her outstretched hand, as if she was just another piece of furniture. My aunt froze, her hand hanging awkwardly in the air. Leo's face broke into a massive, genuine grin. He made a beeline. Not for the critics. Not for the major collectors. But straight for our table. He walked right up to me, ignored everyone else, and wrapped me in a huge hug, lifting me off the ground. Yashashri, he said, his voice full of emotion. You came. I was so nervous. I hugged him back. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Leo, you earned every bit of this. He turned to my table, his arms still around my shoulder. Icely. I'm sorry. I have to tell you all. This woman, Yashashri, she's the only reason I'm here. I was painting on the street. She found me. She gave me my first set of real canvases. She mentored me. She financed my first studio. He looked at me, his eyes wet. She's not just my patron. She's my hero. I smiled. Leo, you're embarrassing me. It's the truth, he said. Then he finally noticed Caleb. And this must be Caleb, man. Your mom never stops talking about you. Caleb, for the first time all night, looked up and smiled. A real, wide smile. I looked back at my family. My mother, Brenda's wine glass slipped from her hand. It hit the table, spilling red wine all over the white tablecloth. But it didn't break. It just rolled. No one moved to stop it. Kayla and Aaliyah were just staring, their faces blank, with a shock they couldn't process. But Melissa? My aunt had slowly backed up to her chair and sat down. Her face was no longer pale. It was a mottled, deep, humiliating Red, the socialite who lived for status, had just been publicly snubbed by the guest of honor. In favor of the flaky artist she'd spent the night scorning. She had just tried to impress the future of art by humiliating the very person who discovered him. She didn't just look embarrassed. She looked finished. The intricate social world she had built around herself, with her at the top and me at the bottom, had just been completely and totally annihilated in front of everyone. The room was dead silent. The only sound was the clinking of glasses from the bar, far across the gallery. Leo, the artist, was still beaming, holding Caleb in conversation. I let that silence stretch. I let them sit in it. My mother, Brenda, was frantically dabbing at the spilled wine with a napkin, her hands shaking. My nieces, Kayla and Aaliyah, looked mortified, staring at their plates. And Melissa, she just looked empty, defeated. I turned away from them and back to my son. Caleb was looking at me, his eyes wide, no longer ashamed, but in awe. I smiled. A real, warm smile just for him. Caleb, I said, you must be starving. What would you like to eat? He hesitated. Mom, I signaled to David, the head caterer, who was standing nearby, watching everything. He hurried over. Yes, Ms. Yashashri. David, I said, my son would like to order now. Please bring him the $120 Wagyu steak, the special reserve, and the truffle potatoes, and whatever dessert Leo is having. Bring him that, too. Of course. Right away, David said, smiling for the first time. As he left, I finally turned my full attention back to my aunt. My voice was no longer warm. It was cold. It was quiet. It was the voice I used to close a deal. Melissa. She flinched and slowly, painfully, lifted her eyes to meet mine. You told my son he should wait in the lobby, I said, my voice clear and precise. You called him a tag-along at this event. You stood here, in my house, and tried to teach my 15-year-old son that he didn't belong. She opened her mouth, but only a small choking sound came out. I looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't feel anger. I felt a kind of clinical pity. I suddenly understood her. People like Melissa, who build their entire identity on the perception of status, are the most fragile people in the world. Their power isn't real. It's an illusion held up by a bank loan and the ability to look down on someone else. They don't just enjoy feeling superior, they need to. They have to push someone else down to feel like they're standing tall. It's the classic illusion of power from an empty wallet. And tonight, I had just called her bluff. Yashashri. I didn't know, she whispered. It was a pathetic defense. You're right, I said. You didn't know. You didn't know because you never, ever asked. You were too busy enjoying the story you'd written for me. The flaky artist. The failure. You needed me to be that, so you could be this. I gestured to her. To the expensive champagne. To the whole charade. Please, she begged, her voice cracking. We're family. Family, I repeated the word. It sounded foreign. A minute ago, you were happy to let my son wait in the lobby while your family feasted. That's not family. That's a hierarchy. And you just found out you're at the bottom of it? I looked over at my gallery director, who was trying very hard to look busy nearby. Crystal. She was at my side in a second. Yes. Ma'am. The catering bill for this table. For my guests, I said. What is the total? Crystal glanced at her tablet. For the private catering, the $150 bottle of Dom Perignon, and the extra service. The total comes to $850. Melissa's and Brenda's eyes both widened in panic. I nodded. Thank you. Crystal, please send that entire bill to Mrs. Ari. Melissa here. I smiled at my aunt. After all, this was her celebration. For her daughters? Come on, buddy, I said softly, taking my son's hand. Let's go somewhere quieter. Crystal led us away from the main floor, away from the scene, and into my private viewing room. It's a space I designed myself, behind a wall of one-way glass, with plush velvet couches. It's where I bring my most important clients to close major deals. David, the caterer, brought in Caleb's food. The $120 Wagyu steak, the truffle potatoes, and an elaborate chocolate dessert. Caleb sat on the couch, looking small in the big, expensive room, and took a bite. His eyes went wide. This is the best thing I've ever eaten, he said quietly. Good, I said, sitting next to him. Eat up. You deserve it. We sat there for a minute, just watching the party through the glass. We could see the main floor, but they couldn't see us. Leo, the artist, was surrounded by a crowd of admirers, and at our old table, we could see my mother, Brenda, and my aunt, Melissa, having a frantic, whispered argument. Melissa was holding the bill in her shaking hand, her face crumpled in panic and rage. My mother was digging through her purse, probably checking her credit cards. Caleb watched them for a moment. Mom. Yeah. Buddy. Why? Why does Aunt Melissa hate us so much? He sighed, looking at the scene. Oh, sweetie. She doesn't hate us. She hates what she thinks we are. She needs someone to look down on to feel tall. It's not about you. It never was. It was always about her. I turned to him, putting my hand on his tannery. But I need you to listen to me. What she said tonight. That feeling she gave you. That feeling of being a tag-along. Of being on the outside. I know that feeling. And there are so many people in the world who feel that way every single day. It's a letter I wish someone had written to me. It's for anyone who has ever been made to feel like they were on the fringe. For the one who was invited, but not welcomed. For the plus one no one talks to. For the one who has to laugh at jokes that are actually about them. You are not background noise. Your story is not secondary. You are not a tag-along in anyone's life. That feeling of not belonging. It's a painful, heavy coat. But it's not yours to wear. It belongs to the people who put it on you. Tonight, you felt small because she needed you to be small. But your worth, Caleb, is not decided by people who are too insecure to see it. You are not an extra. You are not a tag-along. You are the main event. You are the whole story. And anyone who makes you feel less than that doesn't deserve a ticket to your show. Not even family. Especially not family. Caleb looked at me, his eyes shining, and he nodded. He took another bite of his steak. We looked back through the glass. The argument between Melissa and Brenda was getting more heated. My nieces looked like they wanted to disappear. Caleb watched them. So, what happens now? Now, I said. They figure out how to pay their bill, and we finish our dessert. I pointed out at the room. Look, Caleb. There are two kinds of people in this world. There are people who spend their whole lives desperately trying to jostle for a better seat at a table someone else built. And then, there are the people who just go and build their own table. He smiled, finally understanding. You're a builder. Mom. That's right, I said. And so are you.